Hey guys, Kev here, and I want to have a knife ramble sort of and just talk about the types of knives, types of production, right? What is it when we say a production knife versus a custom knife, right? You hear this term midtech get thrown around a lot, and I feel like that term is a little bit, I don't know, deceiving in some ways. So I wanted to kind of talk about it. I have a couple examples of each type of thing here. And let me actually grab one other one we could talk about. Put that here like this. I said I had two of each. One of these is sort of rare, so I don't really know how to classify it, right? But let's try, right? All right, here we go. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nope, I have 7 knives on the table. I'm an idiot. We all knew this. Let me just lay them down. Why am I doing this? I thought it'd be cool to stand them up like that, but then I was like, that is kind of dumb, actually. So there we go. And from left to right, we have here the Jack Wolf knives, sharpshooter jack. We have the EMP EDC nimble, Tanto. We have the Asher knives Douglas. Keep your eyes out for this one, guys. It's going to be a popular knife. We have the Tough Knives Lefty Reset Sheep's Foot. We have the Gavco knives Nurse Liner Lock. We have the OZ Machine Company Roosevelt. And we have the Craig Brown knives Cortex version 2. So, what are the different types of knives that I have here, right? What are you looking at, guys? You're all, my OCD is going nuts right now. You're probably all going, okay, Kev, a lot of these are the same. Like, what the hell are you talking about? All right, so let's just break this down. This one I want to kind of put aside for a second, but let's talk about the EMP EDC nibble. So how's this knife made, right? Well, a guy named John Rusk. He is a guy who decided he had a huge ball sack. And one day he was like, you know, I'm going to take my huge ball sack and I am going to start a knife company from scratch. Maybe I don't even maybe have the money to order knives, but I have a badass design and I'm going to make it work. So I drew it up, sent it off to an OEM, which is an original, what does OEM stand for actually? Original Equipment Manufacturer, basically a production company that makes your shit. Sends it to them, they make prototypes of the knife. He gets it and he starts marketing it. Then he does a pre-order for it and he sells enough to make the production run happen. So he does. He gets them in and he sells the rest and they become an instant classic. And all of a sudden, a year later, you're looking at the 5th model now, I think, of EMP EDCs. This is the Tanto version of the nimble. But anyway, this knife is made by a production company, manufacturer in China named QSP, right? They make their own knives too, but they made these knives. So he just designed it and paid them and they made it. And then he sells it, right? So this is the Asher Knives Douglas. And this is the same exact thing. It's just a different OEM. This one's made by Kunwu Knives. But same thing, Justin Cotton has a big ball sack. And he decided to start a company a few years ago. And he has bootstrapped the shit out of that into now one of the most popular budget brands, I'd say, in the entire community. So, but these are both the same, right? Design gets sent to China. Chinese OEM manufactures a bunch of them. And they are sent to the company here in the U.S. and they sell them, right? It's a production knife, meaning a larger quantity of them is being made, right? You could also classify a number of things as a production knife, like the ProTech Malibu here. This is made in America by ProTech, but this is a production knife. They make a lot of these. They roll off the press, right? They basically can make all of the parts, and they get thrown into wherever, and then they can take blades and handles and put them together, and they all fit together, and they can make a bunch of knives, right? They're not each individually, like, perfectly cut and all this stuff to make one knife. They're made large batch, so to speak, right? So it doesn't matter where it is. China just happens to be the case on these two, right? Now, let's take that to the other end of the spectrum, right? This is the Tough Knives Reset. This is a left-handed version. This is made by Jeff Blavitt. And this is a handmade, one-of-a-kind custom. So, yes, he has a specific model called the Reset that he has made multiple of, right? But I think he rarely, if ever, makes the same exact spec of a knife. Now, this is left-handed, so there is for damn sure not another one of these out here with the blue collar and backspacer and the slot and no front flipper. When I had this made, I talked to him directly, and I told him what I wanted. I wanted blue accents. I wanted the sheep's foot blade. I wanted the slot. He always initially designs it with the flipper, the front flipper up here, and I asked him to just chop it off because I wanted to make sure the detent was dialed just for the slot. If I ever have another one made by him, I will probably keep the front flipper because he did say he dials it for the slot, and then the front flipper is just kind of a secondary thing. But anyway, you know, this is a custom handmade knife where you work directly with the maker to pick what you want, right? And then he makes the knife for you. Oh, shit. He makes the knife for you, and you get it. And let's say you have an issue, right? Which I sort of did with this knife. When I got it, it had a little bit of lock stick, right? Well, with a custom maker like that, it's easy peasy. You send it back, they fix it, and you get it back, right? Usually guys are really good about that. They want to take care of their customers, right? You will get some of the crabby makers who just don't want to deal with people. You know, you'll have some people who are ghosting people, like we'll get into in a second, but handmade custom that I chose everything on, basically. And, yeah, but it's expensive, right? That one's like $300. This one's like $80 probably. This is $1,300. So, you know, you're kind of paying for that privilege, so to speak, right? Then you have something like this. It's made by Gavco, and this is the custom Nurse Liner Lock. And this is basically the same. It's a handmade custom. He makes it entirely by hand, just like the Tough Knives. But the difference being is he makes them, and then he posts them on Instagram, and he's like, here, anybody want this, right? And then a bunch of people say, yep. And whoever gets it first gets it. So it's not designed or spec'd out by the customer, right? It's pre-made. It's maker's choice, essentially. Handmade. And then you get to buy it, right? So it's essentially the same thing. Just wanted to make that little bit of a caveat there. It doesn't make how it was made any different. They're both completely handmade customs, right? So those are the two ends of the spectrum, right? Mass production. And, you know, these aren't like massive production. You're talking about, you know, 3 to 5, 800 pieces on a run of these. Then there's a knife like, you know, the 80-20.5 that's mass produced, and there has to have been thousands of these made already. But it's the same concept, if that makes sense. All right. So then we have this sort of middle ground over here. And these are what I call a production custom. And a lot of people question me when I say that, and they go, Kev, there's already a name for it. It's called midtech, right? But I don't see these as midtech. So let me explain. These are not handmade. You know, they're not, every piece isn't handmade and put together and filed and and all that shit, right? These are completely handmade knives. But they're also not completely just production knives where they're just, they make 10,000 of these scales, 10,000 of that screw, that clip, that blade. They cut this blade out in this shape 1,000 times, and then they just take the pieces and put a knife together, right? It's not like that. These are made by mostly computer-generated machine work, I should call it, CNC work, right? They program the machine to cut everything out perfectly and whatever, so you don't have any sort of jagged edges or anything that could be misstrued. Now, these two guys are just so good at their jobs at this point that they almost look machine-made on their stuff. But you will catch some things like, you have a little bit of discoloration on the blade there. You got some marking. There's actually a divot in the blade. You see that divot right there? There's a little chip almost in the blade. It came like that, right? You'll have that kind of stuff. Like, I've heard of people taking apart a custom knife, and they had tried to put a clip screw in, and it didn't fit right. So then they moved the clip up and they put new holes in. So there's just a random hole that you can't see, but it's there, right? Because the guy screwed up at one point, and then he was trying to hide the screw. That kind of shit happens on those. This is just like perfection machine work. This, to me, is the absolute sweet spot of knife collecting, knife enthusiasm, knife world stuff, right? This is the kind of shit I'm all about, because you get this absolutely just precision made thing that is gorgeous. It has unbelievable tolerances, so obviously the action is going to be fantastic. The fit and finish is fantastic. And then the maker puts his own little touch on it, right? And that's where the cool part is. That's where the custom part comes in. He makes this baller-ass Zircuti clip and backspacer to match, and it kind of all flows together with that, right? He numbers each one, like this one's number 555. That kind of stuff just, I don't know, really does it for me. And then they do finish work batches, right? Like I said, the clip, the backspacer. There's only 2 of this knife ever made in the world. There's only 2 of these. Number 554 and 555 have this exact configuration, right? Magna cut blade, bead blasted or whatever it is, scales. I think it's DLC hardware. I don't think it's Zircuti or zirconium, but it could be. And this clip and backspacer, all of that together, stonewashed blade. There's only 2 like this, And that's what's really cool about it. On this, I don't know how many have this blue anno work that Craig Brown did on it with the black micarta inlays, the zirconium pivot collar. Just incredible, right? And that's, to me, the production custom sweet spot, right? He's making 10, 20 of these a week now. So, extrapolate that over a year. He's making a lot of knives, right? Same with this guy. His new model, he's making, he's posting like 8 or 10 of them a week at this point for sale. He's doing a weekly drop, just like Oz is doing. This is the OZ Machine Company Roosevelt, by the way. And this is the Brown Knives Cortex version 2. So, that's kind of it, right? Then there's sort of the midtech thing that people talk about. And I don't have any midtechs, right? I've heard people call this a midtech, but I wouldn't go that far. So the way I see a midtech is basically it's kind of like this. A production company makes the knife, right? They make 300 of them or whatever, right? Then they get sent to the maker or the owner of the company, whatever, right? And then that person does something specific to the knife to change it. So, like, let's say these all get sent to John Rusk over at EDC, right? And then he takes the knife and he does a hollow grind on it. Like, he does a regrind on the blade. So he's doing 100, 200, 300 regrinds of blades and then selling the knife for more, obviously, because now his time's involved in it. That, to me, is a mid-tech. Or if they all got sent to him and then he took the scales, took them off, and then he put a new pattern in them, or he anodized them, or he did some kind of finish on them, or whatever, right? Something like that. To me, that's a mid-tech. Like, for example, the Alliance Designs Jasmine. There's some of those, not Jasmine, I forget what it is. I think it's an Alliance Design something. I think it is a Jasmine, actually. There were some that got sent to Ray Laconico. So they were made by Riyadh, I believe. Then they're sent to Ray Laconico, and then he does his hollow grind on the blade. So he essentially finishes the blade. That's a mid-tech to me, right? This is kind of the unknown, right? What do we call this? People call this a mid-tech. I wouldn't go that far. So the reason why this isn't just a production knife, because there's 300 of these made, right? And they're made by an OEM or manufacturer in China. So your instinct would say, Kev, these are just production knives, right? And I would tend to agree with you. Essentially, it's a production knife. But the difference here is that every single one of the pieces on this knife, minus the hardware, obviously, but this scale, that scale, this titanium bolster / liner, this titanium bolster / liner, this spring under here, and this blade, every single piece, right, other than screws or barrels or whatever, is numbered specifically for this knife. So let's say there's 300 of them, right? This, let's say, could be number 142. So every one of the scales, this one, that one, they underneath have it written on there. 142. Is that what I said? 42? 142. Underneath this liner here, it says 142. Under this liner, it says 142. On this spring, somewhere it says 142. Written on this blade, somewhere, hidden obviously, is 142. I'm making that number up. These knives aren't like these knives. They aren't just like, hey, let's make, okay, he wants 300 knives, right? So let's make 600 scales, because we need 2, right? 600 scales. We'll make 300 blades. We'll make 300 clips. We'll make 300 backspacers, right? And we'll make 300 sets of hardware. And they make all those things separately, and then they just throw them in a bin, right? Like, I'm not saying this is actually how it works, but it's just a crude description. There's a bin that says hardware. There's a bin that says clips. There's a bin that says scales. There's a bin that says backspacer. There's a bin that says blade. And then a guy in China at the plant or manufacturing place, he goes and he grabs one blade, one scale, whatever, right? He grabs those things and he puts a knife together. And then, boom, you have a knife, right? And they should be machined well enough, all of the parts, that they all go together and they function, and hopefully you get good centering, right? But have you ever gotten a production knife where, you know, the centering just a little bit off, or, you know, you're just like, what is up with this action? It's just not, like, you know, working right. And that's because it's just a bunch of parts that were slammed together, and there's your knife. And I'm not saying that's bad. Machining has gotten so good that that is easily possible, and it's done extremely well, right? Okay, so that's that. This is where one dude is taking the time to perfectly match every single piece of this knife just to this knife. He's not working on 10 of these or 20 of these or 300 of these at once. He's working on one single knife, and it's basically built from one piece of this and one piece of that, and it's all put together by him perfectly, right? Handmade custom. These are just different. It's like, it's sort of like this, but on a larger scale, if that makes sense, right? It's on a more repeatable scale. Does that make sense? So like, this is this, but taken to a crazy extreme, right? Where instead of making sure every piece fits together or whatever, we're just making one of these, one of that, one of that, one of this, and doing it 300 times and then putting the knife together, right? this is more like a elevated version of this, like a more refined version of this, where they're still mating each piece together, right? Like, this knife is always this knife. There's no like, oh shit, this isn't lining up here. Let me just grab another scale and let me try that, right? You can't do that. Like, it just would not work. So each knife is basically not made, but hand assembled to perfectly match each piece, if that makes sense. I know it's hard to explain. That's why I said it was kind of the outlier. I don't know what to call it, but I wouldn't call it a mid-tech, because to me, a mid-tech means somebody is doing something after. So, like, if these got sent to Ben, he's the one who runs Jack Wolf Knives. If they got sent to Ben with just like a regular, just a blade stock or whatever, with, you know, just a stonewash maybe, or whatever, just a flat grind, and then he ground each one to have this ridiculous hollow grind, then that would be a mid-tech to me, right? Or if he made these scales himself and they just sent him the knife without scales and he put the scales on that he made, that's a mid-tech to me. So this isn't that. It's still production, but, you know, it's just very high-end production, I guess, with a lot of handwork involved. Like, they have to hand freaking sand and knock down everything and make sure each freaking knife matches perfectly. It's pretty incredible. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, I didn't know where to put that one. If you guys have a good way of putting this one, let me know. But that's kind of a breakdown of the different types of production, or different types of ways to make knives, I guess, right? I don't know how else to put it. Again, I think my favorite by far is this category right here, the production custom, as I like to call it. And I'll explain the benefits of, I guess we can explain the downfall and the benefit of each one while we're here, right? So when it comes to, now again, we can't really describe this one, so downsides to this, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like the best of all worlds, honestly. You're getting a lot of hand fitment. You're getting a lot of skilled craft labor on these, but yet you're still getting them mass-produced, essentially, at a reasonable rate. So, really, this is kind of the best-case scenario when you're talking about making knives, right? When it comes to the production end of it, where you're making just 300 of these and whatever, the downsides are kind of like we discussed. I mean, you're going to have parts and pieces and things that just aren't going to line up. Like, one of the pivots they made might be a little wonky, and it just happened to go in the knife you got, you know? And they don't extensively test every knife on the way out. They should, and they try. But I think some OEMs are better at it than others, and a lot of times you'll get knives that are very subpar because, you know, I think a lot of times it's just the pivot tube is a little bit wonky, and that screws up the whole knife. You know what I mean? So QC is a very, very important part of this type of knife right here. Really any, but like this type of knife, you really want to have a thorough QC job when these knives are going out the door, because you're going to have bad ones. Like, that's just how it is. You're making 300 of something all in pieces and putting them together. You're gonna have a few that just don't work. You know what I mean? A part is off by a millimeter here, or a hundredth of a thousandth of a whatever tolerance here. It's just gonna happen, you know? And that's why whenever you get knives made like this, you're always gonna want to get more than you want. Like, for our project, we wanted to order, you know, we pre-sold basically 450 of them. Well, we weren't going to order 450 because what if there's some issues or whatever? Like, you need to have those extras for that type of scenario. Now, we're going to hand check each one before we ship them. But anyway, so that's kind of the downside there. But the plus side is you can make a lot more of them, a lot faster, and you can get them at a good price. This knife right here is probably going to be around, I don't know, 80, 90 bucks. I could be wrong. It could be 100, but it's not going to be more than that. And that's because he had 300, 400, 500 of these made, whatever. And they can do that for a reasonable cost because of how they're producing them, right? A machine can just pump out blades or scales or whatever, as opposed to one person having to single-handedly machine every piece down and make it fit each knife, and like that just it wouldn't work. So that's the benefit here, is the price, the cost, and a lot of times, depending on the manufacturer, the quality is really, really good, especially for the price you're getting it at, right? Okay, so pluses and minuses to the full hand custom knife, right? Obviously, your plus side is you get to kind of pick what you want in a lot of cases. In some cases, you can't, like this, but in a lot of cases, you get to build the knife you want. That's a huge plus, right? In some cases, you can even pick blade shapes, style. You can just design your own knife and be like, make this, and the guy will do it. That's more rare, but it happens. So that's a plus side. Another plus side is it's unique to you. Like, nobody else has this knife. There's nobody else out there that has this knife. There's plenty of people that have this. I mean, right now there's not, because these are kind of like prototypes or early samples. But like, okay, there's a lot of people that have this knife, right? There's 300 of these made. So it's not rare or anything. This is literally unique to me. And that is so cool, right? But what's the downside? Okay, downsides are you pay a premium, right? You pay a very high premium because you're having them handmade by a person who has to make a living. That's a downside. Another downside is handmade knives just have quirks, guys. You're going to have issues, right? For me, it tends to always be lock stick or detents, right? Like when I got this knife, the detent was a little weaker than I liked, so I sent it to Gavco, and he made the detent a little stronger. Great. But it also had lock stick, like pretty bad, where you had to like sometimes I had to use 2 fingers to push it out of the way. He tried to fix it twice. Every time I got it back, it still had lock stick. And then the third time, he never responded to me anymore. And at that point, I had to take matters into my own hands, and I sent it off to the knife modders, who are a godsend. And all they did was carbonize the lock face again. And it has been perfect ever since. So it's just little things. Like this one had a little bit of lock stick when I got it. If you slow roll it like an absolute just bitch, it doesn't lock up. Hey, see, look, it did it that time. Let's try it again. See how lightly I'm doing that? Oh, look. So maybe it already broke in. Cool. There we go. No. All right. Perfect. So anyway, it would not lock up. Like it would, you know what I mean? I could spine whack it and it would fail. If I slow it, like an absolute bitch, you would have to do it like I was doing, like literally, like, oh my God. If you just go like this, fine. If you flicked it, fine. Never had an issue. So, a little bit of lock stick in that, and I had Jeff look at it, and he fixed it, right? And that's a downside because you're going to have those small issues, but it's also an upside because depending on the maker, you'll get really good customer service, and they'll just fix it for you nice and easy. You don't have to deal with some overseas company. Now, these are boutique brands, so they're going to take care of you, don't worry. But, like, if you buy a Spyderco or whatever, like, the warranty just sucks. So that's a downside to production knife. So your downside here is price, obviously, and little quirks and things. If you aren't a patient person, don't get into customs because they take a long time to make a lot of times. You can wait on the books for a long time. They're super expensive. Then you can have issues where you got to send it back and then you got to wait some more. So just be patient if you're going to try customs, okay? The other downside I think I said was you're going to have the little just nibbles. Like you're going to have little niggles. You're going to have little design elements. Like you might have, this grind is a little off from that grind. Like, if you look at this, is this perfectly even to that side? I don't know. That stuff never bugs me, but it does bug some people. So you're going to have imperfections because it's literally handmade, right? We talked about this little, nick right here in the blade. Like, if that stuff bugs you, probably don't want to get into customs. Okay, this is why I love this production custom world, because it minimizes the downsides on all of these, right? They're not as expensive as customs. Now, they can be, right, if you get them secondary or something like that. But, like, this knife starts at $700 right now, new, right? This was $1,300. This was, like, $900. So, you know, they cost a little bit less. They're a little bit more accessible in some cases. But you probably have an easier time hunting down an OZ Roosevelt than you would a custom Tough Knives or Gavco in some cases, depending on what you wanted. But you get my point. There's more of these out there because of that. Plus side to me is it's basically got the machine work and just precision of production knives like this. But it also has the custom touch and feel that these have. And I think that's why it's the perfect blend, because you get that perfect precision. It's dead centered. It's, you know, it's beautifully machined, every corner, every whatever. But at the same time, it's got these nice human touches, like doing this. Dude, these type of patterns on Zircotite, like that shit is not easy. I've tried to ask people to make it for me before, and nobody's even wanted to attempt it. And he does it a lot. So same thing here with the ano work and everything. Just you just get that, and then you get usually a nice white glove treatment with these guys too. Like, makers can be a little bit rough around the edges, right? Like I said, ghosted on this one. This one, Jeff is a great dude, easy to talk to. I absolutely love Jeff, so no issues there. But I've heard a lot of things about this maker and that maker, right? Well, usually when you're in this production custom realm, these guys have some experience talking to people, and they're really good about it. Their customer service is good. They have a really nice website or something. You know, it's just a really good middle ground between the two. And I just think that that's the sweet spot. So for me, you know, I have like this. I have the Kvist Bladeworks variant custom. I have this Brown Knives Cortex. I have the Brown Knives FSD here. I have a Grimsmo Rask. I have another Roosevelt. This is sort of in between. It's kind of a hand custom, and I would put it more of a custom, production custom. This is a Trevor Berger Urban. So just absolutely the sweet spot, in my opinion, when it comes to the type of knives you want to look for. But, you know, you're going to pay for them too, so there's the downside. If you're just looking for budget knives, you're going to want to stick to this category, you know. So that's it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Appreciate you guys checking the video out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I kind of just mentally put this together as I went, so sure I missed some things or categories or ideas or whatever. I'd love to hear it. And if you guys have a good way to place this, if you want to just say, hey, it's a production knife, okay, I get it. But it really isn't. I don't know. It's hard to explain. But they're fantastic. So anyway, definitely check out the EMP EDC Nimble Tanto. That pre-order's coming soon, I believe in May. And then the Asher Knives drops are coming as well on the Douglas. And the whole Spiro, or with whole Spiro. Absolutely fantastic knives at a great price. So anyway, love you guys. Hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. And I will catch you later.